It was like Compton didn't exist, physically, geographically, and culturally. Legend has it that Compton was left off an official county publication that outlined the neighborhoods, towns, and cities comprising Greater Los Angeles. That was odd for what is one of the oldest cities in Los Angeles County. Indeed, it was like you couldn't miss it because it's smack dab in the middle of the county, thus earning the nickname Hub City. Compton was a place to where middle-class black families, mostly from the South during the Great Migration, started moving in the 1950s, despite the restrictive covenants and intimidation by white residents. By the 1970s, blacks comprised over 65% of the population, and Compton flourished as a middle-class LA suburb. But by the 1980s, ravaged mostly by the crack epidemic and violence involving street gangs such as the Bloods and Crips, Compton was a shell of its former self. It might be in the center of Los Angeles County, but from a racial and economic aspect, it was easier to just ignore it. Until five guys, not the burger place, showed up. Eric Lynn Wright, the son of a postal worker and grade school administrator, decided that lawn mowing and delivering newspapers weren't going to cut it. He needed money, and if that meant dropping out at the 10th grade to do it, he most certainly will. Dressed in a white t-shirt, a pair of Dickies or jeans, tube socks, and a baseball cap, Eric became very successful, treating his occupation with the robotics of a white-collar professional. But after a few years slanging that crack cocaine, its bountiful supply made possible in the Los Angeles area, no thanks to traffickers like Freeway Rick Ross, Eric began to question the long-term prospects of such an endeavor. In 1982, First Lady Nancy Reagan launched the infamous Just Say No drug awareness campaign, becoming the most visible arm of the War on Drugs initiative kicked off in the 1970s. And her husband was big on the war on drugs. In addition, the Los Angeles Police Department, in response to growing gang violence and activity, established the Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums Intelligence Unit, also known as CRASH, which will eventually be infamous for their not-so-subtle crackdowns. For Eric, continuing to be a street pharmacist could only lead to two conclusions: jail or death. He decided he wanted neither. Plus, he was now a father. Granted, hip-hop started in New York, but it had already spread to the West by the 80s. Music sounded like the way to go. Eric had $250,000 saved up, with the intention of setting up a record store. Until he got acquainted with Steve Yano, a UCLA graduate who forewent a career as a psychologist for a more lucrative one selling R&B and rap records at the Rhodium Open Air Market in Torrance, located in southwestern LA County. When Eric told Steve of his plan, his response was, "No, don't open a record store. Open a record label." Eric relented. A record label it will be. But now he needed talent, because he wasn't going to be the one scratching records or rocking the mic. The son of parents who worked at UCLA, O'Shea Jackson lived in a neighborhood in south central Los Angeles, a region of LA County that's about a 15-minute drive from Compton. A rather brilliant student, O'Shea typically got A's and B's in class, with English being his best subject. There was something else he loved: rap. In 1984, he inadvertently got a nickname, Ice Cube, from his older brother, who playfully threatened to shove him in a freezer and only pull him out when he's frozen solid. Inspired by acts such as Run DMC, Sucker MCs at one point was his favorite record, he joined forces with Anthony Wheaton, who went by the stage name Sir Jinx, to form his first group, Stereo Crew. Jinx was an aspiring DJ and producer, destined to help craft his crewmates' early solo classic material. But at that point, Cube also had his sights set on Jinx's older cousin, who not only was doing both, but also had records out. As an integral part of the world-class Wrecking Crew, a supergroup of DJs specializing in electrofunk, Compton native Andre Young was a local star. Renowned for his mixing and layering skills, he consequently referred to himself as Dr. Dre, an amalgam of his favorite basketball player, Dr. J, and his shortened first name. Enforcing Andre's moniker was the crew's breakthrough single, 1984's Surgery, in which he's the subject and featured DJ, and which ended up selling about 50,000 copies. Not bad for a teenager who got terrible grades at high school and had limited success in being a dancer. Dre loved funk and soul. Parliament Funkadelic, Earth, Wind & Fire, Isaac Hayes, Sly and the Family Stone, Marvin Gaye, and James Brown were just a few of his favorites. And when hopes of being a dancer didn't pan out, he tried DJing. He hung out at Eve After Dark, a Compton nightclub founded by Alonzo Williams, the founder and leader of the world-class Wrecking Crew, hoping to catch a break. He finally did when one of Alonzo's DJs didn't show up. To test his mettle, Alonzo had Andre square off against one of his DJs. Antonio Carabi had recorded Surgery with Dre in the makeshift studio in one of Eve After Dark's backrooms. Also from Compton, the west side of it, and quite the drummer, Antonio went by the stage name Yella, inspired by the name of the B-side to the Tom Tom Club's top 40 hit, Genius of Love. In Dre, who impressed him greatly with the ability to mix the Marvelettes' Please Mr. Postman with the twice as fast Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa, he found a kindred spirit, a passion for funk, mixing, and, eventually, an enhanced musical direction. K-Day was a struggling radio station when Greg Mack took over as music director in 1983. Mack was able to achieve a second win for K-Day when he brought in Dre and Yella as the station's first mixer DJs, impressed by the 8-track mixes they presented. Sinking with its old, outdated R&B playlist, K-Day was now playing rap through the traffic jam mix that Dre and Yella put together. And it wasn't the type of rap music they typically played back at Eve After Dark. Granted, the West Coast hip-hop scene was dominated by crews that specialized in electrofunk, a concoction of electronic music, drum machines, and scratching. The world-class Wrecking Crew, alongside their chief rival, Uncle Jam's Army, led the charge. But there were signs that electrofunk was waning. The success of 12-inch singles such as Surgery was enough to justify Alonzo to cobble together a few more songs and issue the album World Class in 1985 through his Crew Cut Records imprint. But when the World Class Wrecking Crew finally landed a major record deal with Epic Records and released Wrapped in Romance in 1986, the album flopped. Dre and Yella were getting less comfortable with the satin jackets and Eve After Dark sophisticated vibe. And, in Dre's case, a sequined coat complete with a stethoscope around his neck, an image that would haunt him later. They were from Compton, with streets that blasted hardcore rap from New York, not club music, and their style, music, and reality needed to start reflecting their surroundings. Plus, both DJs felt underpaid, especially after Alonzo skimmed most of the advance from the ill-fated Wrapped in Romance. And for Dre in particular, having 2 kids and driving around in a beat-up Mazda RX-7 were additional motivating factors. Alonzo, several years older than Yella and Dre, had seen and experienced enough of the gang life to keep it safe at his establishment. It seemed that Yella and Dre's days with the world-class Wrecking Crew were about to be numbered. By this time, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, who finally got to meet at a newly opened skating rink named Skateland USA, were working together. They made their versions of New York rap records with the combined inspiration of the parodies of Weird Al Yankovic, himself a South Central Los Angeles native, and the vulgarity of Richard Pryor. UTFO's Roxanne Roxanne became the raunchy Diane Diane. Run DMC's My Adidas became My Penis. Salt and Pepper's I'll Take Your Man became I'll F Your Man, and so on and so forth. Like Dre's world-class Wrecking Crew, Cube's Stereo Crew was able to land a deal with Epic in 1986, thanks to Alonzo, issuing the single She's a Skag. But the group fared no better than their electro-funk counterparts. Well, at least it was placed in the bad video because, it helped that Michael Jackson was signed to Epic. Meanwhile, Steve Yano, the same guy who had convinced Eric to start a record label, played the mixtape Dre and Yella cut for him during a visit at Eve After Dark. Soon, he was selling their mixtapes, which were popular enough to attract a short, broad-shouldered guy with thick rolls of money stuffed in his tube socks, and who happened to live 2 streets away from Dre. It was Eric, now going by the nickname Eazy-E. Eazy-E needed the production expertise of Dr. Dre, with the addition of Yella as the DJ to help start his label, which at the time was named High Powered Productions. And Dre introduced Cube to Eazy as a highly skilled wordsmith and MC who already had released a couple of records, most recently with the latest iteration of his crew, CIA. The acronym stood for Criminals in Action, foreboding the type of name the group was destined to use, as well as the type of music they craved to make. But the evolution of the group was far from complete. Eazy-E had two more recruits in mind. Lorenzo Patterson, despite his part-time petty drug dealing, was going to graduate from high school, but he wasn't quite sure what to do with his life after that. He flirted with the idea of joining the US Army, but watching the film Full Metal Jacket, which came out in 1987, scared him out of that thought. On the other hand, his fledgling group, Awesome Crew, seemed to hold a lot more promise. Besides, neighborhood friend and fellow Compton native Eazy-E took him to see Biz Markie perform, and he was sold. He was now going by a stage name primarily formed with a shortened form of his name. MC Ren would be an additional songwriter and rapper to Eazy's growing arsenal. Compared to the other five teenagers, Kim Renard Nazel was the rich kid. Born in Compton, Renard had parents, well-to-do professionals in media and entertainment, ensuring that he got a Catholic school education, and he made mixtapes at his father's radio station to sell at his school. Renard got the stage name Arabian Prince at the same skating rink where Dre and Cube had met, a play off his friend's own stage name, the Egyptian Lover. Arabian Prince's big break would come in 1987 when a song he produced for a trio of MCs from Rialto, located in the Inland Empire area and about 60 miles east of Los Angeles, caught fire as a B-side in the LA area. It was how he and Dre got acquainted, as they would drive together to Rialto because they were dating two of the girls. The group? JJ Fad. The song? Supersonic. Based on the results of Supersonic, Arabian Prince joined Eazy-E's company as a producer to provide a pop-friendly, not pop, sensibility. Ultimately, the group Eric was assembling wanted to produce harder-edged hip-hop, and they needed a befitting name, one that would grab attention, one that would incorporate the term of endearment version of the ugliest word in the English language, used to dehumanize an entire race of people through a history of slavery, segregation, shameful racial violence and oppression, and systemic discrimination. It was at Arabian Prince's house in Inglewood, southwestern LA County, where all six guys settled on N.W.A. Niggaz Wit Attitudes. Jerry Heller had seen better days. A U.S. Army veteran and a graduate of the University of Southern California, he considered 1965 to 1975 his golden professional years. This was when he earned millions of dollars as a music manager and agent from his Beverly Hills-based Heller Fischel agency. Heller worked with a diverse array of clients that included Elton John, Van Morrison, Otis Redding, Marvin Gaye, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. But by 1985, devastated by a divorce, an addiction to drugs and alcohol, and less lucrative acts from the new wave and punk rock scenes, Heller retreated into Macola Records, which had only been in existence for about a few years. It turned out that Macola was the launching pad for the West Coast hip-hop scene. Originally a vinyl pressing plant, Macola played the role of manufacturer and distributor for dozens of acts in Greater Los Angeles. Records from the world-class Wrecking Crew, Stereo Crew, and CIA were pressed there. And Eazy-E, hearing of the famed but down on his luck Heller, needed a manager as a wizened guiding hand for N.W.A. and his company. When Eazy finally got to meet Heller, thanks to Alonzo, on March 3, 1987, he played 3 songs from the tape he had on him: Boys in the Hood, 8-Ball, and Dope Man, a first taste of N.W.A.'s potency as a street-oriented force. By then, the name High Powered Productions was relegated to Eazy's in-house production outfit. His company now had an official name: Ruthless Records. Heller thought he was listening to a music revolution. He already had an arrangement with Macola, which involved getting a commission for every act they linked to the major labels. But he readily ditched Macola for the dope dealer looking to go legit. No worries, thought Macola. Eazy-E approached them with a 5-track EP to press anyway. The EP included the original and radio edit versions of 8 Ball and Dope Man. The 5th track, Panic Zone, was written by Dre and Arabian Prince and had the electro-funk sheen that primed it as N.W.A.'s first single, and thus a concession to radio. A photo shoot was planned for the EP's cover art, and that turned out to be a head-scratching hodgepodge affair. For one thing, DJ Yella didn't show up because he wasn't an official member of N.W.A. at that point in 1987. Ditto to MC Ren, but he showed up alongside the then 4 official members: Eazy, Dre, Cube, and Arabian Prince, and 7 other people were there. Sir Jinx with another CIA member, a DJ associate of Jinx, and a classmate of Cube's who was splitting time between Jinx's and the DJ's couches, an MC and the DJ from MC Ren's crew, and a co-writer of Panic Zone who stood out because he was the only Mexican guy there. The resulting cover surely didn't look like a group ready for prime time. But it got worse. To capitalize on the growing popularity of N.W.A., with Boys in the Hood being a fan favorite, and upset with Jerry Heller and Eazy-E eventually ditching them to search for a major distributor, Macola Records took 3 N.W.A. songs, plus the B-side to Boys in the Hood, and added 7 songs from various acts who were one way or the other linked to the group members. Macola released the compilation on November 6, 1987 as N.W.A. and the Posse. N.W.A. was incensed. Eazy-E, ever colorful with his vocabulary, had some memorable choice words for the situation. But the general consternation was understandable. N.W.A. and the Posse actually sold well, thereby overshadowing the official EP. No one talks about that EP. Many people don't even know it even exists. Now, Eazy-E eventually acquired the publishing rights and re-released N.W.A. and the Posse as a slightly altered version in November 1989. That version will be certified gold within the next 5 years. But the damage had been done. The group still needed an album, an official multi-cut project to rectify that sort of sabotage. While Jerry Heller was finally able to secure a major distribution deal with Priority Records, N.W.A. was determined to bring their brand of hardcore hip-hop to the fore. They were not New Yorkers. They were from L.A., and their city was not all about Hollywood, sunny weather, beautiful beaches, glitzy parties, and palm trees. N.W.A. would go much further than any other act before it in exposing part of America's rotten underbelly, made possible by years of racial antagonism and neglect. For better and for worse, N.W.A., consisting of Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, MC Ren, DJ Yella, and Arabian Prince, were now ready to take over hip-hop and change the course of rap history. And they would do that with just one album.
Niggaz Wit Attitude.
In Hello, the first time in 9 years that had the surviving mouthpieces of N.W.A. on a track, guests Dr. Dre and MC Ren reunited with Ice Cube to help him say, "I started this gangsta shit, and this the motherfucking thanks I get?" As if they were the undisputed pioneers of what would become, for a while, the most notorious and lucrative subgenre in hip-hop, gangsta rap. N.W.A. weren't the first rappers to chronicle ghetto life. New York acts like Curtis Blow, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and Run DMC made sure of that with songs such as 1980's The Breaks, 1982's The Message, and 1983's Hard Times, respectively. N.W.A. weren't the first rappers to chronicle the crime-riddled squalor that typified the subgenre. Schoolie D from Philadelphia is most notable for his 1986 explicit narrative, PSK What Does It Mean?, concerning the city's Parkside Killers gang. And Ice-T, who, like Ice Cube, grew up in South Central Los Angeles, was inspired by Schoolie D's PSK to craft a cop-evading tale in 1986 named 6 in the Morning. N.W.A. weren't the first rappers to use the word nigga. Again, Schoolie D beat them to it with PSK. N.W.A. weren't even gangsters. Only Eazy and Ren ever sold drugs. Only Eazy did it full-time, and none of the 6 members were gangbangers. However, Cube, Dre, and Ren's words in Hello ring with validity concerning the founding of gangsta rap. After all, in 1988, Ice-T, even as he predated N.W.A, had not yet made a gangsta rap album of recognized authority or excellence that broke through the mainstream. An argument can be made for the gold-selling Power, which came out in 1988, same year as N.W.A.'s debut, but he actually came the closest with 1991's OG Original Gangsta. And as for Schoolie D, well, he was lucky he even had a career. He was barely a good rapper. Straight Outta Compton is the first definitive and majorly successful album of the gangster rap subgenre. Laden with bold, aggressive, and profanity-laced rhymes and ear-ripping beats, it was the outlet young black men from L.A. used to inform Middle America of a city that exemplified urban decay, Compton, and rashly and bluntly spit out their views on social issues. It really is a mesh of urban reporting and social commentary. By doing so, these guys formulated the possibilities of gangsta rap: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Straight Outta Compton revealed the complexities and contradictions of this oft-maligned subgenre, its social consciousness as well as its nihilism, its defiance of a perceived racist system, and its self-destructive traits. It was the album that firmly established gangsta rap as a lucrative, commercial, and cultural force, and of course, properly introduced the collective, particularly 5 of the 6 members, as the self-proclaimed world's most dangerous group.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
The album opens with a bang, and a big one at that, with the title track. The Amen break is slowed and fattened to produce thunderous kicks and snares, joined by sustained horn blasts and guitar plucking to create a menacing atmosphere for properly introducing the 3 main vocalists of the group: the bright student with a street edge and a talent for wordsmithing and storytelling, the stoic, no-frills lyricist with the impersonality of an assassin, and the high-pitched voiced guy who sells poison to his community but nevertheless has the playful mischievousness of a teenager who skipped detention. Right from jump, you get the feeling that these guys, to paraphrase MC Ren in this song, are crazy motherfuckers in the street who would not hesitate to mess you up if you tick them off. The madness continues with the most controversial song in this set, Police, which remains the most inflammatory and incisive criticism of law enforcement in music history. Many have written songs criticizing the police, from KRS-One and Ice-T to Dead Prez and Snoop Dogg, but not one has come close to the pure vituperation found here. Dre was initially reluctant to record the song because of his probation due to an arrest for several unpaid traffic violation tickets. Why he changed his mind is anyone's guess. Some point to an end to his probation, and others give credit to he and Eazy being given a hard time by police for shooting paintball guns. Set in a courtroom, Dr. Dre plays the judge. Ice Cube, MC Ren, and Eazy-E played the prosecuting attorneys, with 2 of the verses glued with interludes of N.W.A members being harassed at different points in time by a police officer. And the DOC, a rapper from Dallas who Dre took under his wing, plays the said cop on trial. Dre and Yella craft a backdrop with the boosted funky finger bass and drum beat of Roy Ayers' ubiquities The Boogie Back. It's premium fuel for the lyrics of fury from the mouths of 3 young infuriated black men regarding crooked LA cops, whose heavy-handedness and racial profiling deserves a bloody retribution. At the end, it's obvious how Judge Andre Young is going to rule. And the convicted LAPD officer, dragged out of the courtroom amid his claims of injustice, eventually reveals how he truly feels. Police is as hair-raising today as it was back in the late 80s. Not surprisingly, in August 1989, at the climax of Straight Outta Compton's popularity, Milt Alaric, an assistant director of the FBI's Office of Public Affairs, sent a letter to Priority Records to express concerns about encouraged violence against law enforcement. And based on its threats of violence retaliation, the song seemed to forewarn the LA riots that exploded in 1992 after the acquittal of the 4 LAPD cops who severely beat up motorist Rodney King, thus making the group come off as prophets. But N.W.A is far from done. The intensity continues with Gangsta Gangsta, mainly built from the funky bass line of Steve Arrington's Weak at the Knees. The aggressive drums and lyrics are still in place. This is where the trait of nihilism is even more evident than in the previous songs. This is the darker side of gangsta rap. No underlying reality that undergirds moral values. There's utter hopelessness. No consequences suffered for carrying out or adhering to the ghetto's ills. In fact, it will be this side of the subgenre that would eventually prevail in the following years. Gangsta is sometimes credited with inspiring the term gangsta rap to describe this extreme version of hardcore rap, and which mainstream journalists began to use with the ascendancy of acts such as N.W.A. and Ice-T. They might have not liked it, and they would have preferred the term reality rap, which better described their observances and experiences as young black men in less than ideal LA neighborhoods.
Together are friends. 5 black guys walking together as a gang. In the police eyes. You know what I'm saying?
But in the eyes of
They have you
outsiders
like
looking
this and
in,
head down
being
and
mouthpieces for the ghetto automatically made them irredeemable urban gangsters.
Do I look like a mother role model to a kid looking up to me? Life ain't nothing but and money.
In Gangsta, Ice Cube may have 3 verses of humorless brutality, but here comes Eazy-E with the hilarity and sharp tongue to inject a sense of humor, as he always does.
And all you bitches, you know I'm talking to you.
We wanna you easy.
I wanna you too because you
Straight Outta Compton peters out a little after the first 3 songs. But that's not to say that the other 7 songs on the original vinyl release, and the 3 additions with the CD version, which came out on February 6, 1989, are bad. In fact, there's not one song in Straight Outta Compton that can be classified as terrible. If It Ain't Rough is an MC Ren solo piece, a lyrical showcase that has the self-designated villain in black rocking a funky bass guitar loop from Average Right Band and Benny King's A Star in the Ghetto with a mesmerizing flow. That will not be the only time Ren will rock it solo, as he would have another chance to do so with Quiet on the Set, a breakneck-paced song that equals If It Ain't Rough in quality. Parental discretion is advised is a 5-minute battle fest which features Cube, Ren, and Dre, plus the DOC, rapping over some funky live instrumentation that interpolates the Isley Brothers' I Turned You On. Also worthy of being among the stronger songs are Express Yourself, I Ain't the One, and a remix of Dope Man, which go further into socially conscious territory. In Express Yourself, Dre becomes the group's advocate, rallying against their critics, particularly pop rappers, and denouncing their hypocrisy, even poking a bit of fun at the Just Say No movement. But by far the most analytical and introspective in Straight Outta Compton is Ice Cube. In addition, he's clearly the star on the lyrical front, penning some of Dre and Eazy's rhymes. While, comparatively speaking, Eazy-E acts like a cartoonish gangster character, MC Ren is the plain toughie, and Dr. Dre is a much better producer than rapper, Ice Cube is the prophet of rage, spewing forth his lyrics with unsurpassed intensity and a commanding flow, having a middle finger thrown up at a negligent white America while expressing disgust for the moral deterioration of Los Angeles' poorest areas. In Police, Cube noticeably is the only one of the 3 MCs who significantly addresses the racism of policemen, white and black. Examine Ice Cube's verse, then compare it with that of Ren's and Eazy-E's. There's quite a difference. It's this distinction that would serve him well in the first few years of his solo career. The analysis continues with I Ain't the One and Dope Man. In these 2 songs, Ice Cube denounces 2 kinds of women, the deceptive and the weak-willed, and sometimes he points out that these characteristics overlap. Even the lesser songs, some of which are the ones added with the CD version released in '89, are not bad at all. The 3 additional cuts are the 8-Ball remix, Something Like That, and Something to Dance To. 8-Ball, another of N.W.A's earlier songs, is Eazy-E getting a whole song to himself to further his cartoon-like brand of sick humor, this time with an ode to Old English 800 malt liquor, sometimes referred to as a 40 because the bottle holds 40 fluid ounces. 40 will become a frequent reference in the lyrics of many a gangster rapper from then onward. Something Like That features Dre and Ren doing some old-fashioned trash talking over stripped-down beats, and Something to Dance To functions as the last production vestige of Dre and Yella's world-class wrecking crew, with its electro sound blended with a sample of Sly and the Family Stone's Dance to the Music. Notably, Something to Dance To is the only production that substantially features Arabian Prince. He's the guy pictured between Cube and Yella in the album cover. That was the limit of Arabian Prince's involvement with N.W.A. He was gone after that. The group hadn't even finished recording the album. The reason for Arabian's departure varies. The remaining members were convinced that Arabian Prince's electro-funk leanings were a poor match with their hardcore path, and Heller claimed that he could afford to quit since he came from a comparatively well-off family. But if you let Arabian Prince tell it, the reason for his departure was mainly financial impropriety. For starters, he had brought JJ Fad's already successful Supersonic to Ruthless, where the song became the record label's first hit record, peaking at number 30 on the Billboard Hot 100 and going platinum. The album of the same name, released 2 months before Straight Outta Compton, went gold. In fact, it was the first album release from Ruthless. Secondly, he never quite got over Jerry Heller being brought into the fold. What should have been a shared investment between homeboys from Compton now felt more like the domain of just Heller and Eazy. Moreover, Arabian Prince couldn't help but notice that Heller wasn't being forthcoming about matching deposits from record and tour sales with what the group was getting paid. And no, the unwanted attention from cops because of the police didn't help matters. Ultimately though, Arabian Prince didn't feel he was being properly compensated for his efforts. The issue with finances would foreshadow the eventual splintering of the group. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Back to the album. The production in Straight Outta Compton can't be overstated. It remains solid throughout. The beat thumps, coupled with the funk and soul samples, reverberate with intensity and urgency, a perfect complement to the brutal, obscenity-laced rhymes these guys pump out. The productions range from the rich and sample-heavy to the bare-boned. It's truly hard to point out a weak beat in Straight Outta Compton. Dr. Dre, DJ Yella, and yes, Arabian Prince did an excellent job. Straight Outta Compton is indeed a bleak world, full of contradiction, despair, and lack of restraint. All women are whores, the only whites depicted are racist cops, and black men, including the members of N.W.A, are violent drug dealers, gun-toting hoodlums, rabid misogynists, or all of the above. This is where Ice Cube can dismiss women for being gold diggers while hinting that he treats all women the same way in I Ain't the One, or he can protest the racist actions of police but offer violent reaction as the only solution in The Police. This is where Ice Cube's brief moments of urban critique exists alongside a 6-minute account of Eazy-E's straightforward ghetto exploits. This is where Dr. Dre does a profanity-free song with Express Yourself, then joins MC Ren in the very next track to cram in as many cuss words as they possibly can in a couplet. Again, it's a bleak world. It's hard to believe now, but Straight Outta Compton initially didn't sell like hotcakes when it came out on August 8, 1988. The vulgarity of the music ensured that radio airplay for them beyond the Los Angeles area would be limited, and MTV, the predominant music video playing force at the time, refused to play the clip for the album's title track, which depicted N.W.A caught up in an LAPD gang sweep. But eventually, the environment that threatened to stifle N.W.A's commercial viability began to soften. Coincidentally, in the month when Straight Outta Compton was released, MTV brought over a music video program named Yo MTV Raps, specifically dedicated to hip-hop music. The rap-oriented Pump It Up, hosted by D Barnes, a woman whose path would unfavorably cross with that of N.W.A a few years later, showed up on Fox TV in 1989. It was the same year that saw the debut of the Arsenio Hall Show, notable for being the first nationwide syndicated late-night talk show to have a black man as the host and creator. A black man who was more than elated to showcase hip-hop. And it wasn't like MTV was totally against rap music. When N.W.A presented the music video for Express Yourself, a seemingly harmless, vulgarity-free song about the right to free speech wrapped around a sample of Charles Wright and the Watts 103rd Street rhythm band hit single of the same name, they played it. There were other factors. There's the ascendancy of Eazy-E due to the popularity of Boys in the Hood and his debut album in September 1988. There's the word of mouth regarding incendiary songs such as Police and their relatability to many black Los Angeles residents. There's the relentless promotion at clubs and via mixtapes, primarily thanks to Eazy-E's pioneering snipers. Even the negative reaction from watchdog organizations, politicians, and law enforcement agencies, including, yes, the one that produced that FBI letter, ended up arousing curiosity about the group. The combination of all these factors boosted the sales of Straight Outta Compton. In March 1989, the album landed on the Billboard 200 chart, peaking at number 37. 4 months later, it was certified platinum. It would be certified double platinum in '92. When the N.W.A. biopic of the same name hit theaters in 2015, a sales resurgence helped the album re-enter the Billboard 200 with a new peak of number 4 and achieve triple platinum status. And for a group that never scored any nationwide hits, it finally got a song, the album's title track, in the top 40 of the Billboard Hot 100, 27 years after Straight Outta Compton's initial release. Not only could hip hop be about partying and having a good time, it could also have a dark side.
See, if you talk about like stuff like Jazzy Jeff or LL Cool J, don't nobody bother you. You know, because they ain't talking about nothing. You know, they talking, but they ain't saying nothing.
Talking about themselves.
Yeah, but when you talk about what's really going on, don't nobody want to hear it.
A lot
You know,
more
they
people
always wanna
began
bring
to
up a
pay
problem or
attention
bring
to the
up
rap
excuses
that
if you
the
talk
other
about
coast had to
But
offer.
if you just
It was
think
not
about it, if you
just
talk
the
about
East
what's
Coast
going
that
on
was
in
making
life,
some pretty
violence
interesting
and whatever you
stuff,
talk about.
and it
I don't
took
know,
a
man.
huge
We ain't
splash
no
like Straight Outta
scientists,
Compton
man.
for the world to fully realize that. Straight Outta Compton was a double-edged sword. On one hand, at least on wax, it helped make America's plight in minority and urban areas more visible to a mainstream audience, helping fuel theories of its link to still lingering racism. On the other hand, it opened the doors for subsequent rappers to use profanity more often and paint more graphic tales of the ghetto, often omitting the lessons that can be learned or solutions that could be proffered. And oh, you know the major reason why a lot of rappers, including the socially conscious ones, have uttered the N-I-G-G-A word in their songs ever since? Blame N.W.A. In all, N.W.A.'s Straight Outta Compton probably announced gangster rap's arrival. Rappers like Ice-T and Schoolie D might have had the blocks, but it was N.W.A. that took them to lay the foundation and build the house. It also diverted some of the sole attention New York, the birthplace of rap music, had enjoyed for about a decade, to Los Angeles, and sowed the seeds for West Coast dominance in the first half of the 1990s. N.W.A. would never match or surpass this bar of excellence again, but at least they made an album that proved that they, indeed, really started this gangster shit.
Look at these